most people don't want to pay more for a product that tastes worse. And so how can we actually create products that people love? And ultimately cultivated meat is about creating real meat and just doing it in a better way. And as the world population is getting bigger and wealthier, it wants to eat more and more meat. And we just can't really sustain it. There's like a big protein gap coming.
All right, this is another episode of the Founders Pack Form Your Own Pack podcast. My guest today is Joshua Marsh of probably one of the best names ever, Sci Fi Foods. I don't know if I should be running away or embracing it. What should I do?
Embracing it for sure.
Embracing it. Okay, so first of all, thank you for joining me. I'm glad that we had a chance to connect. For people that don't know, who is Joshua Marsh and what the heck is Sci Fi Foods?
Yeah, well, it's great to be on here. I'm a multi-time founder at this point. Previously had a couple of different software companies that I exited, and now working on figuring out how to commercialize cultivated meat. So growing real animal cells outside the animal, so that we can basically solve a lot of the biggest problems with the food system today.
So it's an interesting approach because, I mean, as someone who's an advocate of Texas barbecue, this seems sacrilegious in some way.
Well, I mean, I'm actually
animals forever, but why did you choose the grow the meat versus fake meat?
Well, I actually also love barbecue. I love burgers. I'm like pretty rare among a lot of meat alternative founders because I'm kind of pretty carnivorous, right? Fundamentally, I want us to be able to eat the real meat that we love to eat without worrying about destroying the planet. Right? And ultimately, meat's one of the biggest contributors to climate change. Beef, especially, is like the worst, responsible for a huge amount of deforestation. And as the world population is getting bigger and wealthier, it wants to eat more and more meat. And we just can't really sustain it. There's like a big protein gap coming. And we need to figure out a better way of doing it. And, plant-based meat is definitely better for the environment, but ultimately it doesn't really taste like meat. Most people don't want to pay more for a product that tastes worse. And so how can we actually create products that people love? And ultimately cultivated meat is about creating real meat and just doing it in a better way.
And I would probably argue that plant-based meat is not better for you, but it might be
it's definitely better for the environment. The whole health stuff's a really complex question. Yeah, probably more than we've got time to get into.
But I'm excited about this in one sense, which is, hey, if you could have I think one thing about, animal proteins is that they're very nutrient dense.
Correct.
But there's obviously, there's always the challenge of things like disease, and there's cycles in it, and then there's the way they're raised and all these issues. So it sounds like you're trying to sidestep that in a sense with the benefits and, take the best and get rid of the worst, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like obviously most people want to eat meat, but when you really think about it, most people don't like factory farming. Most people don't like slaughterhouses. Right. They don't like antibiotic resistance. They don't like zoonotic diseases which come from like COVID, right? Which partly came from animal agriculture and bird flu and all this kind of stuff. Right. So how can we create the same products that people want to eat without any of those problems? And that's really a big part of the promise of cultivated meat.
So I think you said you're starting with ground beef, right?
Correct.
And what's the reasoning behind that, out of curiosity?
There's lots of technical reasons why doing ground meat is much easier than trying to do like a steak or bacon, like kind of structured products like that. And, beef is really the biggest market, certainly in the US, in terms of the revenue. It's also the most valuable. If you look at any kind of ground meat product, it has the highest price per pound of any kind of ground meat. Consumers want alternatives to beef much more than other kinds of products, and it obviously has the biggest climate impact. So all those kind of reasons go together, and that's why we're focusing on beef to start.
So what stage are you guys at? Like, how are you? Do you have a product that's out, or are you just developing it?
We're in R&D, but we're actually building our pilot plant right now. And our goal is to actually be ready to start selling burgers commercially before the end of next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're about 30 people to date. We've raised about $29 million in terms of what we've announced. And we have a big 16,000 square foot R&D facility in the East Bay in San Leandro, just near Oakland Airport. That's where I am right now.
You didn't pick cheap real estate.
Well, San Leandro is like about half the price of Embryville and Berkeley
Oh,
up the
okay.
road,
Interesting. Okay.
and cheaper than San Francisco.
Oh, that's
So
good.
it's one of the cheaper places to be in the Bay, which is still kind of convenient and easy to get to from everywhere.
So is this highly dependent upon like the types of scientists that you can use for it? Is that part of why you're where you're at, or what's part of like
Yeah,
dependency?
honestly, so I actually lived in New York before. That's where I was for my last company, and I moved to San Francisco and the Bay Area with a primary motivation for starting this company because I felt like we had to be here. There's an incredible base of scientists and people working in synthetic biology and biotech here in the Bay Area, as well as people working in food tech, as well as amazing access to capital. And so all of those things kind of came together. And I'm 20 minutes from the beach and go surfing. So that helps as well.
Either. As someone that lives near a beach and doesn't utilize it enough, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. Yeah, so it's synthetic biology. People are working on synthetic biology, so that's a particular type of science. We've met a few of them actually. We met some interesting people actually around kind of the Y Combinator system. There's a few that have gone through that. Okay, so what's next for you guys? So it sounds like you're building a factory. You have a product in mind. Are you? What's the next kind of 18 months? It sounds like there's a lot that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting time. We have ground beef and burgers. We do tastings in our lab basically every week. Amazing. Did like one just yesterday, a couple last week. We're building our pilot plant and working on finalizing our regulatory approval. So we're going to be submitting everything to the FDA. Hopefully later this year. And the goal is to have all of the regulatory approval complete and the pilot plant operational and actually start selling burgers towards the end of next year. So we're really just kind of all hands on deck towards everything we need to do that.
And before I accelerate past it, so first of all, it's cellular, right? So it's basically beef cells and you're like reproducing them.
Correct. Yeah. A big part of our R&D goal is, how do we you take a cell from a cow and there are conditions you can grow that outside of the cow, but it's expensive and hard to scale up. So our big task and what we've been working on for a few years now is how do we get those beef cells so that they're happy being grown at large scale in big steel tanks called bioreactors, similar to what you'd see for like beer or wine, so that you can produce them cheaply with like cheap inputs. Because ultimately, meat is cheap, even premium meat is cheap when you compare it to like the typical cost of like biopharma and growing animal cells in biopharma. And so our whole challenge is how do we do that cheaply enough so that we can have an affordable product that we can produce profitably at scale.
Okay, very interesting. So now I'm having a bit of a visual, which was I was trying to get in my head. Like, so you've got these giant stainless steel type drums, but you're growing it in, and then does it come out? Is it like gelatinous, or how does it?
Yeah, kind of. So the first products we'll be releasing are what we call blended products, where it combines the cultivated beef cells with plant-based ingredients, and the plant-based proteins basically provide a lot of structure. And then, we're using the cultivated beef cells we make to bring in like the fats and some of those proteins responsible for the flavor and experience of meat. And together they combine to actually create like a ground beef product.
Very interesting. Okay. And then how do you get it to market? This is not a direct to consumer play, is it? Or is it?
To start with, we'll be launching through a handful of restaurants, working with chefs and restaurant partners. Okay. And then, there may be some D2C stuff as we grow, and eventually we'll want to get into grocery.
That makes total sense. Remind me when we're going to be in San Francisco and we have a dinner. I can't remember if it's in March or April. I'll have to check. But there is a food entrepreneur I will introduce you to from La Boulange, which is Nicolas, and he would probably be interested in talking to you. So we'll make sure that we make a connection. All right. Well, I want to be conscious of your time. If you could offer other founders only one piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I received a piece of advice when I was a kind of young entrepreneur starting out, and it's always stuck with me, and I think has been very beneficial. And the advice was, look, to be successful in business, you often have to make pretty cold, kind of very rational decisions about priorities, what you're doing, whether you need to hire someone, whether you need to fire someone, and you need to be able to make those decisions, quickly and in a very rational way. That doesn't mean you should be heartless or unkind in how you carry it out, right? So you've got to be kind of a little cold and heartless in how you make the decisions, but then you should be as kind and humane as possible in how you execute those things, especially as they like impact people and people's jobs and people's lives. And I try and always keep that in mind, and I think it's served me really well.
That is great advice. I think it's the first time we've ever gotten that advice. So you are offering something original. That's great. What is the role of partnerships and or community been in your success so far?
Incredibly strong. I've always been lucky to maintain a close group of friends who are also, entrepreneurs or founders or investors, kind of in the community and sharing similar ambitions. And those close friendships have been incredibly helpful, whether it's thinking through challenging situations, getting connected with people, raising money. It's definitely a major part of my success has been down to that community that I've really developed over the years.
That is amazing to hear. Okay. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you, and what sort of contact would you like to make? Who would be a good person to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm just at Joshua March on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn. So easy to contact me. If anyone's doing anything interesting in the space, I'm always interested in meeting people. I also do some angel investing and always love to meet people working in the symbio kind of fields and biotech fields. So please, and if anyone's making the transition like I did from being a software founder into like biotech and food, lots of lessons learned from there, and happy to chat about it.
That is fantastic. And I have people coming into my mind, so I'll have to make sure I connect you. It's a little bit smaller community, but it's interesting. There are some very interesting entrepreneurs that are making that jump, aren't there? So I'll make sure that I connect you with a few people that we met actually through the podcast. So, all right. I want to thank you so much for your time. We're going to wrap with one final thing, which is when we have interesting people on the podcast, we like you to nominate another interesting person. We typically talk to founders or investors in scalable ventures. So who would you like to nominate as a future guest that you can introduce us to?
Yeah, I'd probably nominate Jeff Nobbs of Zero Acre. They're doing some really awesome work, doing cultivated oil and cultured oil, which I think is like really important from a health perspective, and super cool company and great guy.
I'm sorry, his name is Jeff, right?
Jeff, yeah.
Jeff, okay. Jeff, you've been nominated as a future guest. We will accept that. We look forward to that introduction. Joshua, I really appreciate you spending time with me. I'm super interested in what you're doing. And I will make sure that we're going to send you an invite to Intros by Founders Pack, which will give you an opportunity to have automated introductions to other members of Founders Pack. Every Monday, you'll get like an invite and an AI match with someone that you would want to talk to.
Right. Awesome.
This has been another episode of the Founders Pack Form Your Own Pack podcast. We will see you and follow your journey, Joshua.
Cool. Thanks, Michael.